Good morning. Today is the first of Av, Rosh Chodesh Av. I don't know. I'll tell you later. And it's also the, I guess the 19th of July. Let's continue. You want to continue? Okay. We're on page Zayin.
I was waiting for you. What happened? You did that. Where are we up to?
We said, משלמותן של המוחין הקודמים נתעורר במקום מוחין חדשים יותר נעלים. That the moment that the previous mindset, משלמותן, the previous mindset has finished giving you all it can, at that moment, Atik begins to reveal higher mind, a higher mindset that now has to descend into you. Now, the istalkut, we said, is that first of all, what ascends, what disappears from you is the three intellectual powers that you've had in your current mindset. So that, first of all, you're left dim-witted, is the only way to say it. You're left like in a twilight zone, where you don't have the new one, and you already don't have the old one. Okay?
So it was like the lechem upon him, as one goes in, the other comes out.
Yeah, we wish. וההסתלקות ממוחין הקודמים הוא סיבה להתגלות מוחין חדשים ויותר נעלים. And without the ascent of the previous mindset, the new one can't come in, because you have to remove the first one. רק שמתחילה, now this is where the big chap is. In the beginning, you would think that mind would be exchanged with mind, but it doesn't work that way. Rather, מתחילה הם נגלים בזין מידות של המשפיע. First of all, they appear in the 7 midos, the 7 emotional traits of the one who's giving you the mind. Where did a mashpia suddenly come from? I didn't hear about a mashpia until now. So suddenly he has this thing that there's a mashpia. Mashpia means somebody who's giving it to you. Somebody who's giving you the affluence. So what is he saying here? He's saying, who is the mindset leaving from and who is it entering? I thought it was me.
Going from the river.
But now I hear that, wait a minute, there's somebody in the middle. When it comes to mindset, there's someone in the middle. You don't just receive the mindset directly. There has to be someone in the middle. Okay, so now, to make order, we have to say, really, there's 2 things going on here at the same time. Because he's so versed in this, it's like he mixes them together. But for him, it's very clear. The parable we're going to use is the relationship between a teacher and a student. But the meaning of the parable is the relationship between God and the world. Okay?
The world?
And in general, and specifically, as we'll see in a moment, specifically with one part of the world, the Jewish people. In other words, he's looking at the entire classroom, everybody sitting in the classroom. Basically, this is a very good mashal for what we're like in the world. That we're sitting in the classroom with all the other nations, but we're the only ones who are listening. We said this once about Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was a universal revelation to the entire world. Hashem spoke to everyone. The entire world reverberated with the words that he said. But only one people were listening. They were the only ones who
understood.
Why? He spoke in a universal language anybody could understand. That revelation was at the level of prophecy that anybody could understand. Later, when you would translate it into your own existence, you would probably translate it into different languages. But the experience itself was unified. It was universal. Hashem is one. That's what the sages try to say. That he went to all the nations and says, "Do you want to receive the Torah?" What do you mean? He went to all the nations. How did he come and talk to them? He didn't send a messenger or anything like that. It was that this was a universal event. And anybody who wanted to could take part. But nobody else wanted to. So it's like a teacher is in the class, and he's speaking, and there's only one student who's really listening. And we'll see in a moment what qualities the student has. Okay? But this is the relationship between God and the Jewish people, between a teacher and a student, a Rav and a Talmud. Okay? So the mashpia here is really, he's switching to the parable, is the Rav. Who's the Rav? The Rav is Hashem.
It's not really as strong as the husband and wife.
What?
Because they both go
How would you know? You haven't gone over the whole...
Because they both go home to their separate homes after the class is over, and they have no more connection. There is a momentary connection at the time of the giving of the class. There's not a permanent connection.
You haven't had a good teacher-student relationship then. When a person has a real connection with his teacher,
I have a very good connection with
so then when he dies also. It's more than marriage. It's much more than marriage.
Especially if the man is according to Golis, excellent, then the teacher goes with it.
Right? And so we have few examples of that with a husband and wife. For instance, the Rebbe's father, whose Yortzeit is in 19 days. So his wife came after him into Golis, but it's very uncommon. But with a teacher, it's very common. And like you said, in Torah, it's halacha. It's really law. Because that is the nature. The nature of the relationship is much tighter. And not to mention the fact that what you said about they're turning away from each other, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way with a teacher and a student. With a husband and wife, one of the big things that people have to get over is the fact that once the procreative act is over, they do have to turn away from one another. Why? Because they're spent. Well, at least one side is. He's finished. He can't do it. He can't be there again. It's very hard for him. But with a student, it's not that way. That he can speak for hours and hours and hours, and the word is inseminate him, and he keeps doing it. He can do it forever. There's no feeling spent. It's a completely different level of connection. Not to mention that it's also more delicate. In many ways, it's more delicate. The best thing is, of course, if you can do this, and this is when the woman is very much connected to her husband that way, is when the woman becomes the student also of the husband, and then they have something on many levels. That's why. Really, the biggest recommendation today for people to have a good marriage is to learn together, and especially if the wife can feel that she's her husband's student. But if she can't, it's fine too, because even just the fact that there's an exchange like this raises the whole level of the relationship to one that is including the intellectual side, and all the chidushim, all the feeling of newness that comes, that people need in marriage. So Nida gives that in some level, but on the physical level, but you also have to have that on the intellectual level, on the emotional level, and that comes from Torah. That comes from having that relationship with one another. Anyway, so let's get back to this. So he says, first of all, by the Mashpia himself, it becomes the light of the face by the teacher. So now he's giving it to us in a nutshell. And he's saying the first thing that happens is that his emotions change. The teacher's emotions change. You see that. You see it on his face. That's the nehiru de'anpin, the light of the face. And the student realizes that there's something new coming, and he takes nechama in that, and he takes solace in that. That we'll see in a moment why he needs to, but he's already told us that the old moichin is gone, the old mindset is gone, and he's going to take solace in the fact he's giving it to us slowly, and he's going to take solace in the fact that he sees that his teacher is not gone now, he's not dim-witted anymore. He has a shine on his face, which means something new is coming. ועל ידי זה מכין את עצמו ומפשיט את עצמו בשתי מיני הפשטות לקבל גילוי חדש מן המשפיע. And then he prepares himself, the student prepares himself with two different types of preparation, הפשטות, which means going out of himself to receive, and these are what are going to lead to the teacher being able to reveal the new mindset. Okay, now if we take it to Hashem, the same thing happens. That by Hashem, the feeling is that Hashem is gone, and suddenly we see some shine of the face. What's the shine of the face? Take a guess. Where does the shine of the face start? What is the new face that Hashem is showing? What is that? That you suddenly see that there's a new luminary in the world, a new tzaddik. There's something new here. Where does the tzaddik begin to speak from? From the emotions, not from the intellect yet. The mindset is not yet clear. But he begins to feel. It's like it says about Shimshon, V'ruach Hashem echela lepa'amo midan v'ad Beersheva. That there was a spirit, he felt that there was a spirit of God in him, and it began to ring inside of him. He began to feel that there's something, there's new energy here. And you see that on the luminary of the generation. You see that there's something new here. And when the mashpia, when Hashem in this case, or the teacher, sees that the student is preparing himself to receive something new, then he can begin to reveal the new mindset. Because it's well known, he says, this is discussed in Shari Yichud in length, that when there is an empty vessel in the receiver, it awakens new pleasure, a new atik in the giver. There's a new pleasure there, and that's what pushes him to reveal the new mindset. So there's a number of levels here, and again, in Shari Yichud he goes into all the detail, but it's not so important here for the whole story, so he doesn't go into all the details here. But if you notice, there's two different revelations of atik, and it's a little complex, but we're not learning Shari Yichud, so let's leave it for now. And when the student hears the new mindset from his teacher, he receives the same joy and pleasure that his Rebbe had, that his teacher had. And by the receiver, by the student, it's even greater than it was by the teacher, because by the student it is really something new. By the teacher, he already knew about this. Before he taught it, he already knew. He already went through that process. And by Hashem, you can say that of course he knew about it. That he was waiting to see, when is the student ready? When is the world, when are the Jewish people, as the representatives of the world, ready to receive this new mindset? Okay. Zeu klalut haseder. Now he says, this is the general description of what happened when you go from Galut Mitzrayim ve Galut Achon, when you come out of the exile in Egypt, when you come out of the final exile, the one that we're in now. So this is in general. He's going to go into more details now, okay? But not very many new details. The new details are going to take another page here. And, my inclination is even to skip it, because they're all important, they're all good, but it's going to divert us from understanding the historical context of what he wants to say, the general statement of what he wants to say. So I'm inclined, after this paragraph, to skip. Okay? I just want to say that the student is special because he's called a Talmid Muvak. He's called a, would you say Talmid Muvak? He's the
cherished student.
No, Muvak is that he's single-minded. on the teacher. All he wants in the world is his connection with his teacher. Talmid Muvak is like someone who sat before, it's like Yoshua and Moshe Rabbeinu. The Yoshua sat before Moshe Rabbeinu for 40 years and didn't move. Nar lo yamush min ha'ol. That's what it says about him. He's a youth. He's always a youth, because to sit for 40 years when you're 80 years old, I mean, he was 40 when he started, he finished when he was 80. So you have to be young at heart. Because older people already know everything about the world. They can't sit with a teacher for 40 years. It's very uncommon. He's like Rabbi Akiva. He can sit for 40 years as an adult, from age 40 to age 80, and say, I'm just a student here. That's the amazing thing. It's easier if you start when you're 20. 20 to 60 it's even better if you start at 10 to 50. But from 40 to 80, you really have to be a Talmid Muvhak. You have to be a single-minded student. That this is all I have in my world. I have a wife, I have a family, I have grandkids already, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids, but I'm still just a student in the yeshiva. That's all I do. That's what I do. So the Jewish people are like that. In a certain sense, we never went and struck out on our own. All the time, what are we waiting? We're waiting to hear what Hashem wants. We never went and did anything for ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that there's not people who are now tired of that. Okay? The whole Zionist creation here is of people who decided we're not going to wait for Hashem anymore. We're tired of listening. They gave up. Why did they give up? We'll learn. But the real essence of the Jewish people is to be the dedicated student, the single-minded student who's sitting all the time waiting for Hashem's word, waiting for what Hashem is going to teach us. You say, He taught us already.
Teach us more.
But you see, when did He teach us? After everybody gave up. Meaning at the end of the Egyptian exile, nobody remembered God anymore. Nobody was interested anymore. It's then that Moshe Rabbeinu takes us out, and 49 days later, we receive the revelation. So there's this there's this long descent into what seems like complete radio silence. There's no God. We don't understand where He is. He's definitely not saying anything new. And suddenly you get the big revelation. So he says the same thing has to happen in this exile. There's a long descent to the point where nobody thinks that there's any revelation left. In fact, who doesn't even think that there's a revelation left? Even the frum people don't think so. Especially the rabbis. The rabbis, for sure, they say, all we have, ve'en lanu ela haTorah hazot. En lanu shiur ela haTorah hazot. We have nothing but this Torah. The Torah is not going to change. But you can't change it? No, can't change anything. Why? Because we don't understand. We can only cling to what there was. Fine. It's the right thing to do. When there's radio silence, you keep doing the orders you received. That's if you're a true dedicated student. So the teacher went out, I don't know where he is, and this is the last thing he said was to keep this. But understand that because this is this long descent, in the end you're going to find that suddenly at the end of this long descent there's a new revelation. It's not going to be a new Torah, but there will be a new mindset. It's much more than an aliyah. Again, here the idea is that one mindset is being exchanged for another one. The descent is not because people are spiritually weak, but because there is no revelation from above. Because they feel that the teacher has stopped saying, Hashem has stopped speaking. That's the main thing that they feel. And this we'll talk more about tomorrow, and I'll make a final decision for skipping this page and going straight to the punch.
Tell me what this is.